I have been on a quest to construct giant ecosystem vivariums, each hosting a plethora of resident life, plants, fungi, and creatures, to study the dynamics of wild ecosystems and unlock Mother Nature's most hidden biological secrets. It's been over 2 years since I first started this project and have since meticulously cultured 4 massive worlds into fruition. Pantdora, a rainforest floor vivarium, attached via a glass bridge of vines through the floor above to Orchadia, a treetop canopy vivarium, as well as a cave tunnel to Hydromeda, a tropical wetlands vivarium, and my latest juggernaut, Verdantia, an isolated tropical grasslands vivarium, which is scheduled to attach to the other vivaria later this year. As their creator of worlds, I have the responsibility to manage the ecological balance of the ecosystems within each vivarium, resolve its problems, introduce new life, and document all the things I learn along the way. These vivaria tell an insane and inspiring story of triumph, failure, birth, death, rivalries, and intriguing surprises that I can't wait to show you, as well as some brand new, never-before-seen species to enter the system, all happening today. So ladies and gents, grab your popcorn, find a comfortable spot, and let's marvel at the insane world we've created together in a grand 2-year update tour of my vivariums. Welcome to the Season 6 finale of my Ecosystem Vivarium Series, here on the AntsCanada Ant Channel. Please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon. Welcome to the AC fam. Enjoy. The creatures and biologics I collected all lay patiently in their holding containers to be released into my various vivaria. You guys will love what lay in these containers as we visit each of my vivaria to place the new creatures inside. But before we go ahead and seed new life into the system, I have to show you something I found that was not good, that I would be dealing with today. They were gathered behind the rock wall in Pantdora. The Dark Horde, an invasive supercolony of black crazy ants, had established a multi-chambered nest, tending to huge clumps of brood, eggs, larvae, and pupae, all lay awaiting development as the workers tended to their care. I spotted one of the queens deep in one of the chambers. Now, I love all ants, even the invasive ones. I even care for a ravenous fire ant colony. But if you've been following this series for a while, you know that these black crazy ants have been the biggest pain in the gaster since the very start of this vivarium project. The colonies have multiple queens and don't require a nuptial flight to mate, and can inbreed with siblings without any genetic effects, making them a perfect super ant that steals resources from, displaces, and even eats native ants sharing the forest. I've been carefully weakening the Dark Horde's population via spot vacuuming, but this time, I can't quite get behind this rock wall with my vacuum. But AC family, they were actually in the perfect position for me to attempt another idea that would surely wipe out these invaders directly within their lair. I went off to begin the preparations for their extermination in the name of our vivarium's biodiversity. Meanwhile, speaking of biodiversity, I had some ecosystem biodiversification business to attend to. I added the native snails I collected to the rainforest floor. Also in this collection container was a katydid. Welcome to your new home, little ones. It was amazing that one of the snails had a blue tinge to its swirls, something I never noticed when I collected it. I placed the snails in, along with all the leaves and lettuce of the container, which definitely also hosted some tiny unseen living creatures that hitched along for the ride. Next, it was time for these gorgeous bugs. I opened the container to release the assassin bugs. These 2 assassin bugs cautiously looked out into their new world and began to step forward. These assassin bugs are predators, where they use that sharp needle-like beak called a rostrum to stab their prey, inject paralyzing and digestive enzymes that liquefy the prey's insides before sucking them up from the inside out. They deliver a painful bite, so I made sure not to come too close. But I was happy they could join our forest to help control insect populations. Enjoy your new home, guys! Next, one of the grossest creatures I've ever collected. Welcome home, land planarian. It looked like a leech, but it's actually a type of predatorial flatworm. I placed it along with the moss bed it was sleeping on, onto the soil of Pantdora. It woke up, and with its tiny beady eyes, looked around its new home before venturing off into the leaf litter in search of tiny soil insects to eat. Next, from the horrendous-looking critters to the cutest, I placed in the giant millipedes. The massive fire-leg millipede awoke from its slumber and realized it had been placed into new surroundings. With its antennae, it began to sniff the world around it, carried forth by its multiple brightly colored legs. A black crazy ant came to inspect it, but it wasn't a threat against this millipede's solid exoskeleton. I watched with my heart full as it explored and rummaged through the leaf litter. In a new home full of other rainforest creatures, I knew it would do quite well in this rainforest, feeding on decaying vegetation. One of the other giant millipedes also began to venture off into the leaf litter, followed by a very curious Asian bullet ant. Now, speaking of the Asian bullet ants, these ants have been true survivors of the rainforest. I always see them thoroughly foraging the rainforest floor for food, as well as wandering as far as the wetlands to collect edibles to take back to their nest. Other ants leave them alone, and they also don't really bother other ant species. I know they've been thriving in our forest as they've begun to send out males to mate with prospective gamergates, workers that act like queen ants, as this ant species actually lacks a queen caste. I hope to add more Asian bullet ants into the system to diversify the gene pool. By the way, I think it's about time we gave these Asian bullet ants a name. Leave your name suggestions in the comments. There are several other species of ants in this forest, and I've tried my best to keep track of what species turn up. But sometimes, I'll discover some new species that appear seemingly out of nowhere that definitely hitch a ride into our system via leaf litter or decor that I add into the forest. You see, periodically, I need to add leaf litter and plant biologics in order to bring new nutrients into our rainforest. In nature, these leaves would fall from the trees and shrubs from above, thereby replenishing valuable nutrients in the soil by way of creatures and microbes assisting in its breakdown. I need to simulate this leaf fall process every few months by scattering new leaf litter, which I'm doing now. These leaves were also collected from the cloud rainforest I just came back from. And in case you were wondering, I don't bake or quarantine these plant biologics like I would have if it were an exotic pet enclosure, because the whole purpose of this project is to seed life from the wild directly into these tanks. And sometimes the life that propagates from these outside items shocks me. Check this out. A blue ant, a worker from our resident sapphire royals, traveled down with its newly collected moss debris gathered from the canopy down the vine branch. It was headed home. Finding the best way home, though, was a bit of a challenge, it opted to take the pothos stem instead of the branch, which was full of black crazy ants. It wound its way through the chaos of ants and crickets onto the Hallelujah tree stump. I couldn't wait to see where the blue ants were nested. I followed the blue ant where it wandered into a shadowy area of the stump. In fact, several workers were bringing in debris into this area, and upon closer inspection, I noticed a tiny unsuspecting hole with a guard at the entrance. They were bringing the debris into the nest to use as building materials. But as one of the blue ants was standing still to rest, I noticed some peculiar tiny ants. My first reaction was concern, because I thought they were invasive pharaoh ants. But to my surprise, this was a completely different species in our forest. AC family, these are flower ants. They're invasive in other parts of the world, but native to where I live, therefore a friend to our forest. So neat to welcome a new species of ant to Pantdora. Aren't they cool? They definitely got in here via decor. And this AC family is why I don't disinfect any vivarium additives from outside. I continued with the introduction of biologics, and this next addition really excited me. Pilly nut fruit. I collected these pilly nut fruits from the cloud rainforest floor, where they seem to be a popular food for ants and other creatures. I placed them in various spots around the forest. Moments later, these pilly nut fruits attracted some critters that I was elated to see. Awesome! Check out that native roach! I was super excited to see this species of roach. I added this species of forest roach into here way back in 2024, and I thought they weren't able to proliferate, but sure enough, it looks like they have. Moments later, I watched as the Asian bullet ants began tearing away at the fruit's flesh to take home back to the nest. It was amazing to see the distribution and cycling of these newly added nutrients into our system. I also buried a pilly nut fruit directly into the soil, right under the glass bridge leading up to the canopy. Perhaps we could possibly grow a pilly nut tree that could extend up into Orchadia. We'll be heading up to the treetops next, so hold on tight. Now the next creature going into the tank may frighten some of you. Arachnophobes, look away until I say it's safe. I opened the side door, where Valentino, my green tree python, was rested. He sleeps and hangs out in all 4 vivaria. And today, he was chilling at ground level. Sorry to disturb, Valentino. I have a new guest to introduce to the forest. I placed the lichen huntsman spider into Pantdora. I figured this lichen spider would love camouflaging against the rock wall, so I laid the leaf it was on against it and attempted to prod it along. Instead though, it scurried onto the side frame of the door, where it also kinda looked cool. The spiders of our ecosystem have been one massive success story. From jumping spiders to tangleweb spiders, orb weavers, to exotic species like lynx spiders in the grasslands, our arachnids have perpetuated effortlessly in our ecosystem. The king of the spiders, however, were these. A female huntsman stationed herself on the glass, cleaning her legs. She had zero fears in this forest, as nothing was large enough and/or agile enough to catch and eat her at this size. She was the descendant of a huntsman I placed into here 2 years ago, named Lady Deathstrike. And it was amazing to see the resemblance, even after many generations down the lineage. It's actually crazy to be able to watch these generations come and go over time. Perhaps a glimpse of what God sees. These huntsmen have just given birth to this quarter year's round of babies. I see the hatchlings around, and also spot pieces of the egg sacs on the forest floor. These females seem to come closer to ground level to release the babies, but spend most of their time in the treetops. AC family, I think it's time we go up there now and release some more creatures. I opened the container to release some new beetles I collected into Orchadia. This here is the green scarab beetle and a blue weevil. And this here is a pink weevil. I also released another tiny green beetle. There are 400 described beetle species in the world. A whopping 25% of all the animal species humans have ever discovered are beetles. They're essential to ecosystems, and I was happy to release new ones into our forest. I also released another huntsman species up here. Alright, no more spiders, arachnophobes. You can look back now. Now there isn't much new to report about Orchadia, other than the fact that species diversity is at an all-time high, with tree frogs, geckos, blue ants, and other life forms at compost level. In fact, look at this. A mass of whitish buds have begun to grow on one of the branches. They're a bit eerie looking. Later in the day, this mass grew to this. Fairy inkcap mushrooms. These have been sprouting in our forest for years, both in Pantdora and up in Orchadia. I was happy to see the fungi of our ecosystem also thriving. But AC family, sometimes I'll come across life forms that are neither plant, animal, nor fungus that will spring up in the Vivaria. And these next creatures, if they could be called that, were like surprise alien organisms that sprung out of nowhere in Hydromeda, the Wetlands. Our wetlands, though kicking off with a sort of rough start, have turned out to be the most stable and unproblematic of the vivarium worlds, with its gorgeous collection of plants growing epiphytically on the wood. The mosses and vines have truly thrived here, with the vines lowering their air roots down into the water to collect nutrients. Kept clean and manicured by the cleaner cherry shrimp below the water's surface. I love to watch Cascadia, the peaceful waterfall, deliver fresh water to the aquatic system. But one day, a few weeks back, I spotted something truly strange adjacent to the waterfall. These pink balls were nestled all around the wet moss. At first I thought it was perhaps droppings from some animal, but then figured it was possibly some kind of fungus. But AC family, upon further research, I was shocked to discover that these pink balls were none of these. Guys, this is Lycogala epidendrum, also known as groaning slime or goat's milk. It's actually a type of slime mold, an amoeba. These pink balls are the fruiting bodies of the Lycogala amoeba that spring up on damp, rotten wood at a certain season of the year. When not in this fruiting stage, the amoeba are single-celled individuals that move about as very small, red amoeba-like organisms called plasmodia that eat bacteria, fungal and plant spores, protozoa, and organic matter. Crazy to think that such strange life forms exist in the world and in our ecosystem vivariums. From my collection, I had a small container of water scooped up from a drum of water in the forest containing some tree frog tadpoles and mosquito larvae. Have a look at them. This species of tree frog is likely different from the species we currently have living in our rainforest, seeing as they were born in a totally different part of the year. So I couldn't wait to see what type of tree frogs they would develop into. I could see little tiny legs already on the way. Now, instead of pouring this whole thing into the water, where they would surely be eaten by the various predatory fish lurking within, I decided to simply place the entire container on this ledge to allow the critters to develop in peace, as they would have in the forest they were collected from, to enter our system as adults when they were ready. On the moss nearby was a gruesome sight. A female cricket was devouring another cricket. The stench of the carcass attracted an Asian bullet ant. Up in a nearby plant, another cricket watched the gruesome sight from afar. These crickets are opportunistic feeders, and my guess is another cricket slipped from the driftwood and fell into the water, eventually drowned, and drifted its way to this bank where the female snatched it up for a feast. Sometimes the drowned insects will sink to the bottom, where they become food for the various creatures below. In fact, below the water's surface, you could see this in action. A very pregnant amano shrimp was sifting through the grains of sand for edibles. Sadly, the larvae hatching from those eggs won't be able to survive, as they need partially salty water conditions to develop. I think a brackish water vivarium is in our future, AC family. We'll just have to hang tight for that. The tetras swam back and forth, capturing edibles carried by the currents. I spotted one of the crayfish feeding on a drowned millipede that fell from above. It's sad that creatures from above suffer from such a watery fate, but this transit of creatures traveling from Pantdora and Orchadia to Hydromeda to become food for the creatures of the wetlands is necessary and a completely natural process. Pretty cool to know that one biome is feeding another. But speaking of the crayfish, there's a slight issue here. It was an ultimate battle of the titans. The two crayfish had engaged in an epic wrestling match of pinchers and spines in an ancient ritualistic joust over territory and optimal food resources. The larger one on the left had a good claw lock on the legs of the smaller one on the right. But in the world of crayfish, victory isn't necessarily determined by size. The larger crayfish decided to make a run. He suffered no injuries other than a scarred ego, as the smaller crayfish retreated into the plants, which he just claimed as his rightful territory. Now, I initially placed these crayfish into here to help shake the wetlands up a bit, to transform the land, which I felt seemed more like a manicured garden than a wild space, and boy did the crayfish deliver. What was once a space full of mosses were now stripped completely of moss. Bare spots of exposed wood were now seen in places that once hosted some beautiful beds of moss. But the most disheartening loss of all? My precious Boosie! No! The crayfish had eaten my Bucephalandra plants, tearing aggressively away at its rhizomes and eating them cum gusto. I now had no Boosie left in these lands, and it made me quite sad. It was time to intervene here as well. But before doing so, I had to get back to my main order of business. I'll be back to deal with you, crayfish. There were a couple more creatures to release into Verdantia, the Grasslands. I released a glow beetle, as well as a new Queen Dolichoderus ant. Good luck, guys, and welcome to the Grasslands. I noticed a pair of mating clown isopods. This behavior here is known as mate guarding, where the male climbs onto the female's back and rides along with her, sometimes for hours or even days. This action serves to prevent rival males from mating with her before he has the chance. The actual transfer of sperm happens during copulation, which isn't happening here yet. And oop, a passing millipede scuttled by, rudely interrupting them. So the isopods went off to mate in private somewhere else. I was so happy to see life emerging like crazy now in the grasslands. I noticed a slant-faced grasshopper had just molted from its old skin. Emerging as a fully formed adult, it remained here to dry for the next few hours. These slant-faced grasshoppers get their name from their very unique faces. Also joining them in these grasslands were the ordinary green grasshoppers, which helped control the grasses. Young native crickets, and these awesome Philippine katydids, endemic katydids whom I watched grow up in the grasslands, who helped control the invasive basil growing all over the place. Of course, these orthopterans were essential to the grasslands, as they not only ate plants, but they produced some incredible fertilizer through their poop. They also were an excellent protein source for the dinosaurs of the grasslands. Evidence of the dinosaurs' whereabouts were all over these grasslands. I could see pathways that were strategically carved out of the grass and soil, creating a network of frequently used pathways to navigate all around the grasslands undercover. Let's sprinkle some seeds around to lure out our dinosaurs, shall we? It wasn't long before Sunny and Cher, our resident king quails, emerged to commence their afternoon prowl for edibles. They wandered into the misty field for insects and seeds. Now, as much as they love visiting the seed bowl, I've also noticed how much they love foraging elsewhere. I moved these birds in here in hopes they might breed. I've been trying to get them to breed forever, but I suppose their previous homes, namely Pantdora and my giant home aviary, weren't suitable habitats for them to decide to build a nest. But grasslands are their natural habitat, and this was as natural a home as they could get. So I had my fingers crossed for some baby quails running around here soon. There were also other birds that have successfully produced young, but this week I made an alarming discovery. 4 society finches peeked out at me from their nest in the great tree. Last week, I noticed one of the babies poking its head out, so I knew babies were on the way, and I'd be spotting several baby birds around Verdantia soon. When I first added the birds in here, there were 3 hatchlings and some unhatched eggs. But AC family, this week I spotted this in the tree. It was a baby bird. Only one. Guys, I'm sad to announce that this was the sole survivor of the batch. Now, there are several reasons why this could have been the only survivor of the nest. It could have been the largest chick, and the parents continued to feed it more than the others, simply because it could capture their attention the most, until the other chicks starved to death or got pushed out of the nest. Combined with the possibility that this could be the parents' first time parenting. Ideally, all eggs hatch at the same time, and all babies grow at the same rate. But I think what happened back when they were in my aviary was that the eggs were laid by different parents at different times, and usually a mom would only sit on the eggs to heat them up once all the eggs are laid, just so that they all develop and hatch at the same time. But in this case, where 2 couples decided to lay and sit on the eggs in the same nest, it could have created a staggered incubation period, where some eggs had a head start and were further along in the incubation process, causing the eggs to hatch at different times, and some chicks growing larger than others. Poor fella. But I was happy it made it to this fledgling stage, fully feathered, where it has left the nest. At this point, it was still begging for regurgitated food from its parents, but it definitely needed to learn to fly now, so that it could collect food for itself. It was stubborn, as it begged the adults to be fed. The adults would cooperatively teach this chick its first lesson. The flock flew to the other side, leaving the baby with one adult at the great tree. "Okay, little one, just follow my lead," she guided. "Leap and flap. Leap, flap." The baby, suddenly insecure, was reluctant, but something inside him could feel he was ready to try leap, flap. And just like that, the baby finch had taken its first flight. Awesome! What a milestone for this chick. But it couldn't get too confident, because it still needed to work on building those flapping muscles if it wanted to keep up with the adults. Flying back and forth over the next few days would definitely help build that flight stamina. It would soon master stealth flight, where manipulation of the air under the wings is so efficient and precise, it could fly over the mists without moving it. One step at a time, I guess. The moment had come. It was time to eliminate the dark horde. Myrmecologists suggest that the most eco-friendly way to destroy an invasive ant nest is to pour boiling water over it. Here in Pantdora, behind the rock wall, they were in the perfect spot. There was nothing below the colony, just a drainage pit. So all that boiling water would simply drain away and not harm any wildlife in Pantdora. As sad as it was to do this, I knew it had to be done. As soon as the scalding hot water came pouring in, the ants went into a panic and in an instant, any brood or workers coming in contact with a scalding hot wave of water were eliminated. The boiling hot water continued to flow from above as I ensured to cover every single chamber. Workers came pouring out of the entrances as I continued to pour an entire pot of the scalding water into the nest. When it was all done, there was only steam rising from the site like a smoking gun. Everything in the nest was still. I took a breath in, closed my eyes, and said a quiet prayer for these ants. It's still the hardest thing dealing with these invasives. I'm always caught between a rock and a hard place, no pun intended, because I love all ants. But the dark horde's presence here threatens countless lives in our ecosystem. As I've learned time and time again, I had to choose death in order to choose life. Thousands of black crazy ants that would have infiltrated our vivaria were now removed, and their bodies would now safely return to the system as nutrients. I began to plant more plants into the rainforest and spotted one of the new assassin bugs staring at me as I worked. I added new moss collected from the rainforest and planted some jade vine beans, hoping they would one day give rise to beautiful hanging flowers in the forest. As I continued to plant, I began to think about the biggest things I've learned during the 2+ years that I've been caring for these ecosystem vivaria. And here are the top 3 things this whole project of managing worlds within glass has taught me. First, change is the driving force of all life. Life isn't stagnant. It's dynamic and always changing, whether it be the species we get to see in the vivaria or the preferences of the animals within. Change drives all things. This also means that just because we don't see a certain creature in the vivaria, it doesn't mean it's not there, as these vivaria are massive with endless places to live away from my view, only to one day pop up when you least expect. I don't know what the status is on the fungus-growing termites I placed into Verdantia last year. I still see the parasitic pseudoxylaria fungi growing around, which is concerning. If the termites did fail to establish in the grasslands, I'll just have to try again with new termite royals when they breed in June later this year. Speaking of which, the second thing I've learned related to that is that life is all about cycles. Cycles of life and death, where death begets more life in a never-ending process of new beginnings and endings. I'm sad to report that the rhino beetles, which were placed into Verdantia last year, have finally passed away, as I see their exoskeletons scattered around the grasslands. Sadly, as adults, they only live for a season. But we watch the beetles mate with our own eyes. And AC family, below the soil, check out what I saw this week. A small rhino beetle grub. Our rhino beetles have successfully achieved their life purpose of securing the next generation of rhino beetles in our grasslands. Cycles also could be seen in the cycling of nutrients. As waste becomes food, and bodies become soil, which become plants, which become food again, nothing ever goes to waste. Not even the mango pits, apparently, that I've been throwing into the system for our blue ants, because one of them actually turned into a mango tree sapling. Crazy! I don't know if a mango tree will actually end up growing here, but I can't wait to find out. These cycles can also be seen with the seasons. Some of you may be wondering where Shortcake is, our resident strawberry Pac-Man frog. Well, she's currently hibernating beneath the soil, which is perfect because once she emerges in a few months when things get warmer, she'll be ready to mate. And I have some exciting plans for when she does, when breeding conditions are more favorable for her. And on the topic of favorable breeding conditions, I noticed a movement below the big rock in Verdantia. Hey, what's that? It was then that I realized that it was Sunny and Cher, who had established a nest together under the rock. Yay! Looks like Verdantia met their approval for the raising of their first set of children. I couldn't wait to see little tiny quails filing out of here very soon. Finally, the third major thing I learned is that my job as creator of worlds is an active role, not just a passive one. When I simply sit back and allow life to run its course for too long without some intervention, without some addition or subtraction of elements into the system, things go awry. I must act as the outside forces simulating the absence of these glass boundaries, feeding and nurturing, maintaining the balance of life from outside the worlds. I had to continually add leaf litter into the system for nutrients and add new members to the system to simulate the creatures entering the space from beyond. I happened to find a male Asian bullet ant outside my home, which I happily released into Pantdora. This crucial male would soon follow the scent of the Asian bullet ant's nest, enter it, and mate with the gamergate, providing new genetics for another year of ants. It was also my job to manage when it was time for creatures to leave the system. I noticed a huge pile of stones in Hydromeda. Oh man, the crayfish had begun to build tunnels into the drainage layer of the wetlands. This to me was my sign to take action. They had definitely achieved their purpose in our system. I captured the crayfish and moved one into the pond in my aviary and the other into the moat of my fire ant setup. Thank you, crayfish, for your time with us. A few days later, the flock descended to have breakfast, and the baby hung around still begging to be fed. Feed me! No. It was imperative that the baby learn to eat seeds on its own. It was already nibbling on basil, which was great, but this wasn't enough. Would it go for the seeds? What the heck? It flew down and began to feed with the grown-ups, thereby graduating from bird school with honors. Congrats, little one. I placed in a second nest for when the birds were ready to begin egg-laying again, to ensure a more even incubation process for the young. I'm not sure how much longer I'll be keeping the birds in here, as I plan on finding them a forever home soon. I can't believe we're now on year 3 of this Giant Ecosystem Vivarium project, and last night, I took the time to visit each world and truly marvel at the life it contained within. I never want to take this magnificence for granted. What an amazing journey it's been, right, AC family? My heart was so full at all the work we've put in, at the exotic worlds we built together. Now, I also couldn't help but wonder, what was next for this vivarium project? What new heights could we reach on this path to simulated God view? What new possibilities in biological world building could we explore? What new creatures could we welcome? And what lies ahead for those already part of our ecosystem family? What is our role in this entire biological picture? And what new secrets of Mother Nature could we uncover next? Particularly when we finally connect Verdantia to the rest of the Vivaria. I guess we'll just have to find out in the next season. Patience, my predators. I promise, your time will come.
Just need a